we're going to take a break from the show to feature a new segment that discusses an often overlooked aspect of the business. I'm speaking about creating a family-friendly environment inside the restaurant industry. With help from our friends at Family Forward NC, which is a program of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation, a nonprofit that works to support children and their families across the state, we're going to discuss ideas, resources, and testimonials from those that work within the company, as well as actual restaurant owners that have implemented family-friendly practices while working with Family Forward NC. Welcome Amy Diaz of the Diaz Group in Asheville, North Carolina. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
Doing great. Will you tell us a little bit about your company and the restaurants that you have in your group so our listeners know with whom we are speaking?
Of course. My husband, Hector Diaz, opened Salsa. In 2006, we opened Modesto Trattoria, which is a fine dining establishment, Italian, in the historic Grove Arcade. And in 2012, we opened Bomba, which is a little coffee shop, downtown corner cafe.
So specifically working in conjunction with Family Forward NC, what kind of values have you taken from that process?
So this is an interesting question, and I've really thought a great deal about this. There's something that creates stress that working with Family Forward has really helped me to identify, which is because there's so much human-to-human contact, we haven't really had a technological modality or platform in place so that we could maybe plan those family vacations well in advance. We just recently changed our payroll company and the way that we're processing payroll. So it will be a little bit easier for our group to maintain that PTO and those accrued hours. And I think that having a calendar, it sounds so funny, but having an online calendar in place with, particular blackout dates and times that maybe are more desirable for vacation time, I think it will mitigate some stress that comes when you're just sort of talking about it and not everybody on the team knows exactly when one of their teammates will be missing, and being able to plan, that much further in advance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we all know that when you can have a vacation time with your family, it's planned ahead of time. One, that gives you something to look forward to so you can really sink your teeth into work. And then it gives you the time when you're actually on vacation to feel relaxed and like you're away and you don't have responsibilities at work. And then you come back a better employee.
Right. And it also gives your coworkers time to, figure out what they're going to do, while they balance out your shifts. Maybe they have children that they need to provide care for, et cetera. So
what do you guys do specifically in your restaurants to create those family-friendly environments?
What has happened here is that we're working in a high-risk industry. And what I have discovered is that we are managing and mitigating a lot of fear. And there is no app to manage fear. When we're confronted with life or death situations in the workplace, right, which one could argue that we are currently, it just takes a lot of humanity and humility to escort and to lead an organization through all of that. And I have needed support to do those things. And I think that working with Family Forward has really put a lot in perspective for me. It's allowed me to understand why we might have and experience certain conflicts at certain times of the year. It's really helped me to articulate scientifically, overlay all of those things so that I can be a better leader and provide multiple layers of communication. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to check in every morning at 8:00 and say hi to my team. It means that there is another way. If they can't get to work that day, they can get on their phone and they can see that we are at work, and I can better manage expectations. That's critical right now. So I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, these conversations that we have had really, truly been invaluable.
Is there any better endorsement for reaching out to Family Forward NC? So if you're a restaurateur out there and you need some support as well to figure out how to better your business or keep it family friendly, visit familyforwardnc.com.
Family Forward NC is an innovative initiative of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. Family Forward NC can provide your company with resources and support to help you implement practices like paid leave, flexible work and scheduling, health benefits and flexible spending accounts, child care support, and more. For more information, please visit familyforwardnc.com. Business smart, family friendly, future ready.
You are listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for downloading and subscribing. Coming to you virtually live from high atop the historic Raleigh building in beautiful downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B takes the listener behind the scenes to tell the stories of the people that contribute to the creation of the food and beverage community of North Carolina. And now, the misfits in the dish pit, the faces of the front. They are Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today, Max and I are rapidly aging. Spirits, that is. Spirits. We're not rapidly aging. But in all seriousness, we brought in the guys from Aeva Labs. And the founders, Mr. Steve Guido and Zach Fearnside, are here to talk about their proprietary process in rapidly aging spirits. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here.
Welcome. It's good to have you back in the studio. You guys, this is not the first time you've been on the NCF&B podcast.
No, back from the, the kitchen happy hours.
Yeah, we did a little
pre-pandemic parties.
Yeah. That's probably the best last party of last year.
Yeah.
The super spreader.
Please. I'm trying to convince the rest of the kitchen team to do another happy hour series maybe in the fall. Maybe everybody will enjoy hanging out with each other again indoors. Maybe. But if it does, then I would love to get that going again because it's such good times. If you are a listener and you don't know what we're talking about, we'll throw a week-long party here at the kitchen, and it's during those hours in between lunch and dinner, the happy hour time, like 4 to 7. And they were really fun. Like we brought a lot of people in, about like 50 or 60 people a night, and then we just kind of hung out, had food and drink. We did a little podcasting, just hanging out. But there, we first had you both on because I think you know my wife first, Felicia, because she's part of the mentorship program at NC State. Is that right?
That is right.
Yeah, and you guys are alum of NC State?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go Pack.
Go
Yeah,
Pack.
I remember we met through kind of that channel with Felicia, and then also we had another like mutual friend. I think it was Sean.
Yeah. And we just like knew each other, and you guys were just starting this new concept, this new company, Aeva Labs. And I remember even back then, we're like, so what is it? How, like, I can't tell you anything. Like, but you got to tell me something. Are you making lunch boxes, cars, planes?
Yeah, we were pretty secretive there for quite some time.
So in your words, Zach or Steve, what is Aeva Labs? What do you guys do?
So one of our friends likes to tell us we make instant pots for liquor. So that's always been his joke he likes to toss on us. But what we do is we basically help distillers make aged liquor in a much faster and more economical way. Think a week instead of several years.
Right. That's the thing that's fascinating.
Yeah. It's so all the people making bourbon, and you're a small house, let's say, and to make bourbon, you really, to put an age statement, it has to be 3 years. That's, if you want to put an age statement, you can actually make bourbon, throw it in the barrel, take it out, and call it bourbon as long as it sat in a new American oak barrel. However, to really start to get notoriety and bring out some of those evocative flavors, it needs to age for a long time. And you guys have figured out a way to, I guess, recreate that process in a very short matter of time. So I think that's what we're driving at. How do we do it? Let's get straight to the point.
Right into the technology.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how this whole thing came about. So it really started as initially just like that idea, right? So Zach and I were just spitballing thoughts around about what do we want to do. First off, let's take it way back, right? We were thinking about getting involved in more entrepreneurial type businesses, and the two of us were engineering majors, always interested in business, wanted to do that, wanted to pursue that path. And so we started kicking around ideas and looking into different markets about like, all right, what can we do? What problems exist in different market spaces? One that was intriguing at the time was kind of that like liquor space. And, we were young guys when we first started. So I think...
So you obviously didn't have an alcoholic beverage until you were 21 years old.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely
correct.
100% the first time. But yeah, so we started kicking ideas around in that space. We pivoted around a little bit, actually ended up over in coffee brewing for some time. And that's kind of where our trajectory took us. We ended up thinking about how do we make cold brew coffee faster. And that was actually the kind of beginning point of the technology that we ended up creating.
Okay.
So what happened from there was we took that, we started talking about this idea. We ended up over at a local distillery over in Chapel Hill. And I was spitballing with the distiller there. And he's like, have you guys ever tried this with liquor instead of coffee? And I was like, no, maybe this is cool. Maybe we'll try it out. So we did. And we ended up piloting there. And that's kind of where this whole concept came to fruition. So from a technology perspective, it's been one of those things that we've built on over time, but we leverage a lot of the technologies that I guess have been tried and true within this rapid aging space for a long time, but we're really putting a new spin on it. And from a base of the actual what's the technology, we're using things like controlling flow rates, temperatures, pressures, agitation, ultrasonics, all kinds of different things are going on. And so we have a patented process that surrounds that. But really what we're doing differently than, other people in this space is we're focusing on how do we kind of like customize the aging process to really hone in on what a user wants from a sensory perspective, right? So, at its core, making liquor is a craft. It's something that you want to, decide what kind of notes you want in your product. You want to have that control over it. And so we're helping distillers take that from a high level and impart it into the spirit. So if they want to decide, hey, I want some more vanilla notes, I want more caramel notes, it's a little bit too tannic, let's dial that back. We can do that and basically translate those sensory desires into an actual process. So that's kind of what is unique about what we're doing.
That part of the technology about figuring out what's the sensory perception and what does that mean, and then how do I input that flavor in is not necessarily new, and that's not what you guys have discovered, right? Because that's happened in all these parts of like candies or a lot of packaged goods that you have. There's like, no, I want that to be more vanilla. I want that. So that technology exists, right? But like the rapid aging as it relates to liquor is, I think, what you guys hit on. And I read the patent for like 10 seconds, and the thing that stood out was the ultrasonic thing, and it has to be a certain amount of wattage to really affect it. So is that like the
1.21 gigawatts?
Yeah, 1.2.
Man, he's hitting us with the hard questions.
1.7 watts.
Right at the top.
Have you listened to a podcast? I mean, come on, man. This is what we do.
So can you repeat the question on the patent just to make sure I'm...
Yeah, I mean, the thing that stood out to me was and you hit it on it for a second, was the ultrasonic. And I can't even say that I guess that's a ray or some way to increase heating. So I guess what I'm asking is, what exactly is that process of using ultrasonic?
Yeah, of course. And I can get into that. Really, the Terrasentia, who was in the space before us, maybe about 15 to 20 years ago, they kind of popularized this technology. And of course, it's actually been looked into since, I want to say, late 1800s, early 1900s.
Okay.
But essentially what they're doing is, do you know what cavitation is?
No.
So what cavitation is it's the concept of a collapsing bubble. And so what ultrasound waves do is, as they travel through liquid, they basically cause these little bubbles to form and then collapse very rapidly. And what you're looking at is extremely high temperatures and pressures, both around the outside of the bubble and then inside the bubble as well. So these form kind of like very small catalyst points. So it's very teeny tiny points inside of the overall liquid that are serving as very high temperatures and very high pressures to force reactions to occur. So that would be one piece. And
Cavitation, yeah.
Yes. And so...
Root word of cavity, is that what we're saying, sort of?
I wonder. I don't know. I guess so.
Yeah.
He's an engineer, not a linguist, Max.
Yeah. Come on, man. There's a reason I wasn't an English major.
Yeah, that's fine. But you're doing fine with with all this science talk. I love it. So, but you found a way to use this cavitation process to by using this process is how you're basically able to rapidly age something.
If we actually back it up a little bit, it is a piece of kind of the puzzle. It's one of, I believe, 4 or 5 puzzle pieces mentioned in the patent. But essentially, not one single part of the process solves the whole thing. So it's not just cavitation. What we've done is we've characterized these several processes, and we say, okay, this certain process is responsible for, let's say, the oak flavor, and that's not the cavitation piece. And we also do have contact with wood still. So that is where we're still getting the flavor and color is from a forced extraction of the oak. But what we've done is kind of characterize each of these different pieces, figured out how all of them work and how to make them play together, and then translate that into a way for a distiller to use easily. So our software and technology on the back end basically says, okay, you want something that's this tannic, it's this smooth, it's this color, and this mouthfeel. We're going to go ahead and translate all those user-friendly words and match them up with different parts of the technology. So let's say we want more cavitation here for this length and this intensity, or we want a certain amount of oak extracted, and we want a certain color done. We want to lower temperatures or increase flow rates, back and forth. That's kind of the concept behind it. So taking many things that were proven on a small scale and kind of kitchen experiment in the beginning, and now we've taken it to something that's okay. It's actually understandable, repeatable, and kind of reliable at that point.
So through your experimentations and through you understanding your own process, you've understood that, however, we're speaking in like in a beverage sense, when we say, oh, we want it to have a little more tannin or a little bit more oak or a little bit more vanilla, whatever those words mean, you figured out how to interpret that with all of the different variables that make up your process. So if I'm asking for something a little bit more, then you're like, okay, and you two look at each other and go, he wants less cavitation, or he wants more of this.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's essentially what's happening. So
how do you do that? Because you have to isolate a flavor particle, right? And find out, but then there's also people's sensory perception, which everybody perceives things differently. So how do you know, okay, that hits my brain as oak and it hits Max's brain as oak as well? Like how does that get matched up?
It's actually exceptionally difficult, especially when you start to talk about everybody's input distillate is different. So if we go talk to one distiller from North Carolina versus even another one across the street, you're getting very different flavors that are produced from the same processing. So that's one thing that we've worked with for a long time now is, okay, since we're going to work with so many different distillers and not just do it on our own liquid, we've got to really understand what's going on. But to your point, not only do we have our own kind of internal tasting team, we also do regular meetings with our distillers and other distillers to continually get more info and insight on, okay, that's what these guys are also tasting and try and reach an agreement there. Yeah, and what's also something we've done is, what I've noticed is there's not really a good lexicon. Part of that, me being a bad English guy here,
good
kind
word.
Of a
good word. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good reverb that you use in the recording industry. Lexicon. Yeah.
There's like a lack of a good solid language that everybody can agree on for what certain flavors and scents are. So that can actually make a difficult time when you're trying to really sculpt the beverage. Exactly. Because for
Matt
somebody
sees blue differently than I see blue.
Correct. It's true. Yeah.
By the way, we're recording on 420. This is like the stoniest of all episodes. Like I'm sober as a judge, which is not cool. But
let's say, how do we not do a cannabis episode on this?
I know,
on this
but
date?
But
it seems like a
missed
missed opportunity.
You want to spark it up so I can see it on the other side. But just kidding.
No, but I do find this fascinating. I also, and here's the hardball questions. I haven't even started that. But
those with a softball.
About to get grilled.
From being a sommelier and very much into wine, we talk about place and terroir and how that creates flavor. And I'm hearing in my brain, or the one who the devil's advocate in me says, but you're taking the soul out of it, because then next thing you're going to tell me, you're like, oh yeah, I can recreate exactly what you experience in Burgundy. I can recreate Gevrey Chambertin for you or Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, and you're going to tell me, yeah, we could do that. And I'm going to be like, no, you can't. So what say you?
Matt and I have had this conversation about you two guys when I was like, oh yeah, those guys, those are good dudes. We had them on. We should have them on for a full episode. And Matt's like, what did they do again? And I'm like, they wrap it in.
I'm curious.
And, don't worry. See, he gives it hard, but I give it right back. And I'm like, No. I think there's something to be said about this, and I do. I love the romance of the years of age and like all this. It's like it's the vintage and the soil and the time and the skill of the artisan, farmer, or winemaker, or all of the above. I get all that, but then there is something very cool, very Black Mirror of everybody to like take this technology and say we can synthesize this motherfucker and make it maybe not exact. Or also maybe through the process something new, which I almost would rather you guys do, because like I've worked as a Californian who's a big wine guy. I hated listening to California winemakers say that their Pinot was very Burgundian. I'm like, no, just say it's California.
Right.
That's a cool enough place to be. So just respect your area. This is very Sonoma-esque. Yeah, because it's in Sonoma. I got it. So Aeva Labs liquor, whatever you do with it, could be like, oh, this is very Aeva. Oh, this is very Aeva. Right. Because it may or may not be
2019 Aeva Labs.
Exact, but it is definitely, you are altering the flavor of the control of the original, trying to use my science terms, whatever, but of the main product. You're changing it through your process.
Yeah, definitely.
And whatever the end result is, you can speculate as, oh, it's exactly like the way they do in Kentucky, or no, it's different, but it also is interesting because you're imparting new flavors that were once not there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and Max and Matt, you were talking about this, like the whole traditionalism aspect of this industry, and obviously we respect that. You know, the industry wouldn't be what it is without that, and so a lot of the work that we do doesn't necessarily focus on replicating exactly what's been done. We tend to focus more on what can we create that's new, more so than on that other side of things. And so, you know, this is a very contentious like topic within the industry. And we feel that, I mean, you will talk to some distillers and it's kind of split like 50-50. Some are absolutely against the idea. Some are totally for the idea. But kind of from our perspective, there's a lot of creative ability that lies outside of just barreling. Like there's not that many options. Once you like do your thing, you ferment, you distill, you put in a barrel. Once you hit that phase, like you move the barrel around your warehouse, you know, you use a different size barrel, but outside of that, that's kind of where your creativity level ends, right? So we're just adding an entire new dimension of options onto that. And, you know, when we focus on like talking to distillers when we're making new products, we're really trying to get at like, okay, what can we do that's new and different? What can we do that really pushes the boundaries of where the craft is at now, but you know, doesn't infringe upon the traditional values and the craftsmanship that you enjoy about this. So that's kind of where we focused. And yeah, I mean, I think that, like Max, you were saying, I think that's a better side of the market for us to be on initially. I do think the tech at some level will eventually get to that point where you can say, all right, we want this and we're going to try to, you know, basically fabricate it from nothing. And I believe at some point, things will get to that level. It's not today. I don't think anybody in the market is at that point today, despite what they might say.
When you listened to a CD, that's a compact disc, everybody. Back in the day when we were all just listening to records and then cassette tapes, CDs came out in the market. I'm old enough to remember when a CD was new. Now a CD is irrelevant, but when a CD first came out, it had 8 times oversampling. And what that all meant was basically just like, if you look at like graphics on a computer, you have like many, many tight little pixels, and you're just putting pixels on top of pixels and like stacking them on top of each other so that they're kind of making what would be a rigid line a softer, smoother line by just adding many of them. And 8 times oversampling seemed like a big deal. Then it like quickly jumped to like 250 or 216 times oversampling to then a gig of oversampling until now we don't even talk about that any longer. And you know, there used to be a time where the reason the audio purists didn't listen to digital music was because it couldn't hit the high frequencies the way that analog would do, because analog is just taking an actual imprint of a real sound and giving it back to you. But in the digital form, it's just a bunch of little rigid dots that like eventually make a sloping curve. But I think we're at that point with music now to where those high, really, really high sounds, technology is caught up to the point where you cannot tell the difference any longer. So I think that's what you're saying is like, we're in the infancy of this idea, and it's already putting something out. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were listening to CDs back in 1987, and they were fine. It's just the hardcore purists were like, I'm still going to play my LPs, bro, because I can't get that high tin, you know. But it was still putting out a really good product. And then as the time went on, then it just became a point where there's no difference.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to see what your journey is and how you guys do as you're building.
Well, that is, I mean, what you're saying, it's a great parallel because, and what you guys are saying, the altruistic experience of let's give people other options and a new creative canvas. But I guess my concern or the curmudgeon negative aspect of I'm thinking like, well, some marketing person is then going to be like, oh wait, so instead of making Elijah Craig, which is a 12-year, let's say, aging statement or average, right? I can just go to the Aeva Labs guys, use their technology, and make the same thing and charge the same amount of money in no time. And so marketing becomes the death of craft, you know? And I know that's like a very negative way of looking at it, but so how do we carefully walk that line to make sure that this is
continue that same parallel? It used to be back with like the music side of it. You would still record like in a studio. You would still record on tape, and everything was still authentic recording in the hub.
But then you would
analog,
recreate
and then
it.
you would just download it to a digital file, and then the digital file could be duplicated beyond as many times as you want. But in this scenario, it would be like instead of making Elijah Craig, and before even putting it in barrel, you're just putting it in an Aeva Labs idea and just saying, no, it's going to start here and then go on. That's truly where the technology would like usurp the whole idea of making
craft,
bourbon or craft. So we're not there yet, but I'm curious to know where we are today. So let's talk about some of the things that you guys are doing. Actually, let's take a quick little spot just to talk about our friends over at the Triangle Wine Company, who are fantastic supporters. They love selling booze too. We all love this thing called alcohol.
Yeah.
Whether it's beer, wine, some spirits, some vermouth, whatever you want, bitters, if you will. You can get it all over at Triangle Wine Company. You can go to trianglewineco.com to order online. You can have delivery, curbside service, or you just go into the store and you can order a pint of beer or a glass of wine while you wait and talk to somebody knowledgeable about it. Where can they get all these? So where are all the locations back?
Well, thankfully, they're in 5 different places. That's right. They are in my neck of the woods, Holly Springs, out in Southern Pines. They're in Cary. They're in Morrisville. And their new shop is in the Bedford community of North Raleigh, right on the Wake Forest border there. So use the NCFB promo code to receive a discount as well.
So let's talk about what you guys are doing now. So we discussed, and it's cool. Like Steve, you're kind of like a frequent drop buyer over here at the kitchen.
Yeah,
We like the vibe here at the kitchen.
It's been like at least 2 or 3 times this month, I think.
Yeah, it's just like a guy just like shows up. He like creeps up on me when I'm in the middle of editing a podcast and just like dips over my shoulder. I'm like, oh Jesus!
It's like shit. It's you again.
But to give you a little bit of by the way, and I liked your little feature, 20 Under 20 in the Raleigh magazine.
Thanks,
Steve Guido, a handsome man over here, all dressed nice in his outfit.
Well, thank you.
Are you still you're wearing the same outfit you wore for the photo shoot? I think.
No, I switched. Different shirt.
Okay,
Same shoes though.
And those socks definitely. But I, that there's a little. I'm kidding, but the whole point was like you're doing something that's cool, and people are starting to understand like, oh, this technology has some legs. Like this actually can be something. So talk us a little bit from the point where you were transitioning from coffee into liquor, and who
Sure.
have you like? What have you been doing? Like, what have you been working with?
So our business focuses, I'll back it up a little bit more. Once we decide to focus on more of the liquor side of things, we spent a very long time just kind of really trying to find our first customer. And I remember Zach and I, and feel free to like pop in at any point. We were literally driving around North Carolina talking to different distillers every single like weekend. Like Friday, we'd basically head out around, go to Charlotte, hit 3 distilleries. The next weekend, we'd go up to another part of North Carolina, and we'd just try to pitch what we were doing and say, hey, this is very early. We are trying to figure out what interest looks like for this and what we can do for you as a business. Help us understand like the implications this technology might have on your business. And so that continued for some time. And
that would make for a good podcast, right? Your show on the road.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Man, there's some good stories, honestly, from that
lots
time.
of haters.
I can imagine you guys had some difficult conversations with some distillers being like, you're out of your freaking minds, and why would you do this?
Kind of crazy.
Especially when you are going to them and saying, we have this really cool idea and we don't have a lot of proof. That's when you get a lot of hate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But couldn't you, like in the beginning, I assume you guys were just going to the store and just buying some like well-known non-oak aged products? Like, couldn't you just buy moonshine off the wall and just say, we're going to throw this in our machine and see how we can make it better?
Yeah, we kind of tried that a lot of the time. And for a very long time, we didn't even have any spirit that was built off of like a good source, right? So that's one of those things initially when we first started, it was really difficult to navigate. How do we work on liquor when we can't really get a good source?
When you say a good source, are you talking about quality or just straight quantity?
Well, so at the time we at the time were limited to whatever we could get at the store, right? So that in and of itself made it difficult. Not only are you going to pay a ton of markups to buy the liquor just to do the testing, but you can't really get just the base distillate because a lot of bourbon producers, for example, are not just going to sell like good white base distillate at a good proof to test with. And so that was a very like significant challenge when we first started.
It was for a long time.
So how did you solve it?
Yeah.
Well, as we started going, we finally were able to get a couple samples. There weren't anything amazing, and as Steve said, the technology is definitely advanced. So in the beginning, this was not very good. And we've compared the beginning samples we made when we first went on the road with now, and it's a year or two later, it's mind-blowingly different. And that's honestly one of the best parts is looking back every 3 to 6 months and being like, wow, we're still improving. But once we were able to get a couple good samples, we had, I think, 2 distilleries in North Carolina that said, all right, I'll give you a shot. I'll let you guys try this. Bring your stuff here. We'll do a small sample on your little tiny rig. And then when that went well at our first distillery, we got our first customer in, I think, April of 2019.
Yeah.
April Fool's Day.
That's when the delivery was.
Of the
I think we signed,
equipment.
We signed them in like January, February. Yeah, and they're basically like, yeah, you have until April 1st to get it here. Otherwise, we're out. And I was like, crap.
We had literally 2 to 3 months to come up with the money to build the equipment that we didn't have designed. So you can imagine that was absolute panic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
a lot of overnighters.
Yeah, barely finished that. We went to a bunch of investors to try and actually like raise the money to build this. Everybody said, no way. The samples you poured me, you definitely got these from the ABC store. You just poured in whiskey or something. How do I know this is real? How do I know anybody wants this?
It's kind of a good compliment insult, right? Because
they
didn't believe that what you did was quality.
You'd either get one of 2 routes: is the guys who are like, nah, this is shit, or the other one's like, no, I actually thought it was good, but because I thought that, you're fake. So it's like, there's literally no
way to win.
Yeah. And so your audience too, like who you're trying to sell to, I mean, truth be told, you're like more of a B2B company, right? You're business to business. You're selling your product to somebody that will then sell to the customer base. And so, but you're not going to Elijah Craig. Like they're like, no, we're good. We've got this under control. We can make our own stuff. So you're kind of looking for somebody that maybe has like this barrier to entry that wants to have, aged whiskey, but they don't have time. They don't have age. They don't have the time to do this. They're
or
trying
the capital.
The capital, yeah. So like we've talked about, like a lot of wineries would do white wine when they really want to do red wine, but they can do the white in a shorter amount of time because of less time needed to age. So it's like they can put something out into market quicker and then eventually catch up to like their reds that they want to do. So for you guys, you're looking for somebody that is like maybe identifies that they are struggling with the high quality they're trying to put out because of the amount of time they have to put it out. So there in itself is like, it's hard to have that conversation with probably somebody who's very prideful about their product already.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they're like, well, what do you mean? I thought what we're doing is pretty good. You're like, yeah, but I can make it better. It's like, well, why would you need to make it better?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
One of those things, like it's just such a nascent technology that a lot of people just don't understand how to wrap their heads around it. And it's definitely not something that made it into the business plan, right? They came into the business knowing like, hey, we're going to be waiting another 3 years. So when we come to them and say, why are you waiting 3 years to make money on this product? We can put maybe not
track
that.
You there.
Yeah, maybe it's not even that product, but like we can do another product. We could put out a lower level line to get you by. There's a whole lot of options, and just coming to them and giving that idea up is just, I don't know. Some people can't even wrap their minds around it. They're like, no, this just, I can't do it. I can't handle it.
Different variables of aging, and like as Matt was, talked about on our show before, like just the elevation of a barrel in a room will change the flavor profile.
Yeah.
What if like just throwing Aeva into this whole thing is like, oh, we did one barrel, not really a barrel, but we did the amount that's a barrel through the Aeva process, so that's part of the blending process now. So we're doing actual age with this hypered age all together. It's like it just gives another color to paint with in the whole idea of making something, which is pretty cool. So what have you put out? What's
have you currently available?
Yeah, like what are we at liberty to talk about? Like companies you've worked with and labels you put out there?
Some of them, yes. So we're at least now at double-digit products, double-digit distillers. So things are much better than they were in 2019.
Yeah.
And probably the closest guy to us is down in Clayton, in still with Aeva Rum. It even bears our name. Yeah. So I know I can share that label totally comfortably.
We've got the bottle on our bar here at the kitchen.
Yeah.
But not only do we have kind of double digit, we're now in 7 states, which is kind of hard to believe. So distillers across 7 states. We have a couple different products. We've got stuff from a all naturally kind of cinnamon aged whiskey, which is kind of interesting. So somebody had the concept of, what if we took Fireball but made it a little bit more naturally, not as many additives, not as many kind of flavorings in there, instead made it with the cinnamon bark in the wood. So we have launched that product, Coattail. I think it's actually in Cameron Village here.
Yeah, you can get it at the Cameron Village store from Old Nick Williams Distillery.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they're up in Louisville.
Yeah.
So it's like an aged Fireball.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically,
without all the whatever chemicals or particles, whatever that they put in to make it taste like cinnamon.
Yeah, nothing like that. Just literally wood and cinnamon bark. Right on. And then, we've done, rums are pretty popular, and I think that's also part of the regulatory environment around it, where there's really no aging related or barrel related requirements for rums. So everyone's like, whatever, Wild West, we'll try Aeva Labs. And process works super well on rum. I really like what we did down in Clayton, and we've done that also with a few other distilleries as well. So that continues to be a popular product variant. But we've done stuff all over the map, man. Like anything from rye whiskeys, bourbon whiskeys, rums. We've even been talking about doing aged gin for some time, Amaro. So it really spans the spectrum. There's a lot of ways to kind of utilize the technology itself. Like you even mentioned, what if we just created one barrel of which we blended into multiple other barrels which were traditionally aged? That's also another way to skin the cat. So there's just tons of different options.
Your rye whiskey that is currently sitting in my house, about half full or half empty, however you want to look at it. But but the voice of the podcast, Brian and I, we were tasting it, and I didn't tell him anything about it. I'm like, hey, just drink some of this rye. What do you think? And he loves himself some whiskey, and he's like, that's pretty good. I like that. What's going on there? I'm like, that whiskey was aged maybe a week. Maybe that was the amount of time. Is that right?
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly 5 to 7 days or so.
Just
in
about.
Your process. And it came out this golden brown. I mean, color-wise, no difference than what you would see a 10-year aged whiskey. And he's trying. He's like, "Holy cow!" I'm like, "Yeah, this is legit. It's not. It has actual real oak, real toasty notes, kind of almost like that vanilla, a little marshmallow, toast inside of it." And I mean, I wanted to be a hater at first, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. And then you try it, and you're like, okay, this is actually pretty legit. So much so that we were talking a lot about, I love the whole idea. So then I was like, Steve, how could we figure out, in one of your many times just sitting here in the studio, coming in unannounced and uninvited?
Always.
He's a popper inner. He's like a Kramer.
Yeah, he's like the Kramer. The kitchen's Kramer.
All right.
Guido's coming.
I will actually bear that nickname.
He even kind of looks like a young
Yeah, if
version
I grow
of
my
him.
hair out a little bit more, I think I
Wild on top,
qualify.
Yeah. the Kramer 0.50. Yeah, even you've
Oh,
like
man.
rapidly aged Kramer, or like the other way around. But we were talking about, like, I was barrel aging a few cocktails just for fun. I did a Voucre in a 3-month time frame, and then I did a Negroni in another 3 months, and then for 1 month I just did a barrel aged margarita, but instead of using lime juice, I used lactic acids because the lime juice would go bad and get gross and sitting there. And I just tried it over the weekend. Pretty awesome, pretty delicious. I liked the science of it. So we were talking, we're like, why don't we do a barrel aged or an Aeva Labs aged cocktail? And you've come by with a couple ideas. The first, which one is it? What do you have right there?
We did it. Let's see. We got the Negroni, which
Yeah.
is we were basically doing an aged Negroni.
Yeah.
So that one is pretty cool. So we got a before and after. We just got to mix in the vermouth here, and yeah, well, we can give those a try. But
Yeah.
that was a weird one. We've honestly never aged any cocktails before. This is the first time that we tried it. So a little bit of a shot in the dark. We did a couple iterations down in the lab, and I think it came out pretty well. Definitely a difference between the beginning and the end product.
Yeah, no doubt at all. Like,
Yeah.
the first time you tried the Negroni without the aging staple, it just tastes like a typical Negroni. Of course, it's gin, and I think we used Campari and then vermouth. And so it's just equal parts. You put it in. And Negronis are delicious. They're simple. They're easy. And, pretty straightforward cocktail. But then going through this process, you get like all of this depth of character and this woodiness, and it almost like kind of softened the edges, because sometimes a Negroni can be extremely bitter, and that's kind of a cool thing, but also could be a little tough on the palate. So I think that what I got from the Aeva version of it was that it just kind of softened the edges, like sanded it all down, so you just got the pure flavor profile without that real bitter sensation.
Yeah.
It's great. You have one here, right? Or
I do. Yeah.
yeah. This one's not.
That one is iteration 1 that you have.
Yeah.
That's the non-aged one that you're pouring now, Matt. And then
Oh, this is the non-aged one. Okay.
This is traditional.
Well, that bottle also doesn't have any vermouth in it.
Yeah, because one thing
But,
that
yeah.
you're talking about is because of the heat, right? Getting back to the sciencey side of it, this does go through a heat process,
Yeah.
which definitely does not work well with wine-based products.
Wine is not very happy getting into elevated heats, so no. We actually had the first
Thankfully.
run spoiled, so
Yeah,
you're
Matt's still
safe
trying to
for
keep it
now.
pure over
You're
here with the
safe
wine.
for now, Matt.
For now, yeah, until you figure it out. Well, how could we protect the wine from the heat?
We're coming for
Yeah.
you.
All right, now I'm gonna taste the aged one.
So Matt's going back. He just tried the non-aged. This doesn't have the vermouth in it, but
Should get the
that's
point
okay.
across.
But you can splash it in there and do whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's significant. Like you can tell the difference. It's not subtle at all. It's like, oh yeah.
And how long was the aging in this? In the
This
aged
one's
Negroni?
actually pretty short. I want to say more towards the 4 days. So we can kind of change it between 3 to 7 days, sometimes a little longer if we really want to do something magic to it.
Yeah.
So this is on the shorter side just because we didn't want to overshadow the kind of complexity that a Negroni carries on its own.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I mean, that's like a barrel. Yeah. Like a barrel aged Negroni from a really good cocktail spot that you've had, and you're like, oh yeah, I want to try that.
But you did it in a weekend.
Yeah,
essentially.
versus like 2 to
Yeah.
4 months or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea because barrel aging cocktails is very trendy right now. A lot of places are, love it, but the age is the biggest problem with it. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna have to use space, time. I'm gonna have like, it has to be a chilled room. It can't be too hot. What happens if it does get hot? Now you've just destroyed all of your product, for this time. So there's a lot of variables that can, lead to why people don't do the aged idea.
Yeah.
But I thought this was really cool. And then what else were we working on?
We did this vodka. We tried a vodka old-fashioned for a little bit of a spin on the norm here. So
Yeah, I was like telling him. Like,
And so
oversimplifying, vodka is just basically it's like a neutral grain, if you will.
basically just a neutral base. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not going to have as much complexity and character as you would with a normal whiskey, but it allows the wood to shine a little bit more, just because there's really nothing else there. But it should be interesting.
This is the base here, and then you have it. So
Yeah, and then I also have the base before it's been put into the old fashioned too. If you want to sample both of those.
okay.
Did you use my burnt brown sugar?
We did.
Yeah.
It's not in the base one,
Not the
but
base,
it's
but in that one.
but it's in the old fashioned.
So what do you do for the citrus part of the old fashioned then? Again, because that probably is not going to stand up well in the aging, right?
So that actually totally could stand up, and we actually have a product we're messing around with right now where we actually do kind of a citrus extraction using peels. So that actually does hold up, because we actually we were actually making an Amaro doing that. So if I had
kinda
thought
run
about
this.
it, I would have totally put in citrus peels, but it really skipped my mind. So so that's where the citrus is. It's not there.
All right, so the one so we just tried straight vodka. Now this is straight vodka through the Aeva Labs system of aging.
Yep.
Without any this is not the cocktail. This is just vodka.
This is just
Correct.
the vodka.
But now it's arguably corn whiskey.
I know,
because
well,
it's
that's what I was
100%
trying to-
corn.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know whiskey has to come off the distill, but I think this would still make at a certain ABV. But I
yeah,
think
if it was at the right proof, it'd technically be corn whiskey or just whiskey.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what.
Depending on
proof
how it was
came off,
distilled
but-
is really usually the big difference between vodka and
Which I don't know if you just made me think this as like a good psalm, like you start saying things and then like you make everyone influence and think that. But I feel like I taste corn. I feel like I taste the corn out of this spirit now. But like it's interesting. It's like this is not vodka. I mean, it's definitely akin more to whiskey at this point.
Totally.
Which I always then say, like, well,
But like a
what's the
lighter
difference?
style
Like,
whiskey.
What, like, what I still don't really get is like, how is vodka and moonshine really not the same thing if you're using corn as your base spirit?
It's
just the distillation.
It's the distillation of what ABV you're bringing it off the still at, or what proof you're
okay.
bringing it off the still at.
Yeah, so
If it exceeds, like, if it goes high proof, then it's
Yeah, because you bring like bourbon
No,
off
vodka.
at like 126 proof, I think, something like that, versus vodka, is down in like the 90s, 80 proof, something off the still, somewhere
All right,
around
now,
that.
I want to try this cocktail though.
Okay,
So this was like to make
an old fashioned,
out
with
of
vodka,
using Aeva
which
Labs.
has got to have a different name that I'm sure somebody's already
A new
coined.
fashion?
wow,
wow.
that was so fast. It's almost concerning. You're just ready for that one.
Whoa. Oh, that's delicious. Like, seriously?
I actually haven't even tried this yet. Let me.
Yeah, you got to get yourself up on this. So I do a nice little burnt brown sugar simple, and I'll put a little like Luxardo cherry juice in there as well after I burn the sugar. So I did that for these gents and dropped it off on their doorstep over the weekend and said, yeah, have at it. Try to make something cool with this, and you did. That's interesting. Like, it's different.
I'm gonna be naysayer here.
You're gonna be a naysayer?
Yeah, I'd prefer the whiskey in that one, like good hardcore
Yeah, but
rye
it's
whiskey.
not like what you would expect. I think it's like it's a new thing. Mm-hmm. It
It's
tastes
definitely
different.
It's
Yeah.
definitely different. You can certainly tell that it's a vodka base and not a whiskey base. So.
See, now I'm thinking though to really expand on the rapid aging thing, the barbecue world, because it takes forever to make brisket overnight. How can we rapidly age the brisket or cook the brisket
Oh,
to
Lord.
mimic or to get it just as good, and juicy?
Oh, but it does go through high heat, so you could almost like cook the meat.
But then you have to.
Now we're really making the instant pot, y'all.
Yeah, but then the outside would get super crispy or would get overcooked. I don't know how to
don't know.
like. That's where time.
The physical unit that you've created is like comparable to what, like a refrigerator box or something. Somebody, I think
Roughly.
you guys kind of said,
Double wide.
like a
double wide
double-wide
refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about that size.
And you just kind of effectively just pour the neutral grain into the top and just let the process go for a little while, and then it just comes out.
Essentially, what happens is we've got a really long kind of like mesh basket in there, so distiller can pull it out, put in whatever kind of wood, whether kind of toasted oak chips, which there's an area of customizability there, or if you're going to put in like citrus peels or that cinnamon bark we spoke about, load it in, and then they pump in their spirit, customize it on the screen. It's got a nice little sexy touch screen. Press go, and comes back in a week. That's it.
I think that's so fascinating too. Like it's like what I said to Greg over at Y Hill, and he was like reluctantly making a seltzer, and I like kind of challenged him. I said, well, yeah, seltzers aren't cool right now because the only ones that are really doing it are like the Trulies and the White Claws of the world. But if you took somebody that really knew how to make great flavors, seltzers could be really interesting. And then he went out and made his magnificent SOB. It's a strawberry orange basil, and it was delicious.
Wow.
And like a really good seltzer, to the point where he was like, damn it, man, this is good, so now I'm gonna have to make it all the time. But like it's a really delicious product. It was like something new in effect, and it didn't just taste like, you know, the Trulies and the White Claws, say what you will about them, but they're kind of like in a beer parallel, like a Bud Light or Miller Lite. So now if you like put a crafter into it, you could really kind of do whatever you want. So that's what I'm thinking, like unlocking this technology that you have with Aeva Labs and allowing people to come in and just like play with it and say, oh, let's try this, let's try that. How could this work? I think you were onto something to where you could start really creating new categories of beverage. And I love that idea.
Yeah, I think particularly in the liquor space, I really hope we're going to start seeing this, because what I kind of see is you look at Fireball that kind of launched off this giant rush to get a flavored whiskey once that was so successful, or even Screwball, right? You saw Screwball get successful. Yep, peanut butter whiskey. Now there's a million of them, it seems like, on the shelves. That's one thing that we think, if we can start seeing some really successful guys going out there pushing the boundaries, we're going to have that same effect. We've got some really weird stuff we're working on, like a ginger-infused whiskey, all kinds of strange things, just to try and see, okay, how creative can we get? How crazy can we make things out here? Really pushing for the new, the unique. Really trying to push the boundary here.
So how does it work? I mean, now this sounds like an infomercial, but seriously, like if I owned my own distillery and was like, I'd be interested to see what these guys have to offer. How does that like relationship even start and work? How do you guys walk through with a distiller?
That is a great question. So, I mean, if they're already at that point where they have an idea and they're ready to pursue and look into it more, typically every project we do starts actually with what we will call like an R&D phase. So we'll do small batch testing, kind of like what we were doing here when I would pop by unannounced every week with a new sample. So we'll basically grab some of their base product that they're going to make the product from. We'll do a consultation with them to understand, all right, here's what we want, here's what we're looking for. We'll basically translate that into our machine, so to speak, and then do several iterations of testing that we can get to that point where they're happy with the product. And each iteration, we basically have a meeting with them. And this is where things are kind of difficult, right? Like there's this communication barrier because I can't experience and taste what my client is experiencing and tasting. So we basically we found that like doing a meeting and just talking it out, going through our common lexicon of terminology works pretty well. But usually we're able to develop a product for clients somewhere between 2 to 4 months. And then from that point, it's pretty easy to make. So we could either obviously place equipment on their site so they can do it that way if they want to do it in-house, but we also have a contract service arm so they can ship us the base product. We'll run the recipe that we already developed with them, and then we'll send it back. So there's a lot of options, like for a lot of versatility in how we work with our clients, but that's typically what it looks like to actually get a product started.
And is this, both of you guys, this is your main source of income, your employment right now? This has become your job.
This is the baby.
Yeah, it's been since roughly like mid-2019.
That's cool. Well, I definitely applaud the fact of like finding the niche, and everybody talks about how do you become an entrepreneur? How do you create your business? And you find a need, and then you figure out the solution for that. So well done.
Thank you. Means a lot from a hater.
And he's the best in the business.
I am the best in the business. So I mean, I'm not going to just pat you on the back for sure. but no, I mean, listen, I'm sure if you guys have experienced this, is you're going to get a lot of pushback and contention. So I'll I'll say like, yeah, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things like, and just philosophically, especially when you're into wine and you're into the art of making whiskey and you're into the craft that we talk about, and you talk to these chefs and like, no, this takes time. Like you grow things and it takes time. So, and then you guys come along and you're sharp and smart and you're like, oh, we can do that in 2 minutes. It's like, wait. But however, to have the gumption and the creativity to find that thing, that's something worthy of applaud. And yeah, as you say, it'll be interesting to see where we go with this, and hopefully it spawns more creativity as opposed to, I guess, like a stopgap or a shortcut.
Yeah, I think if you're only thinking that this is a style or usage as a stopgap, then you're missing the mark. I think this idea is like, this is a technology that just imparts flavor. It does what time has done to things, but that's not necessarily what you're really selling. You're selling a technique to impart and infuse flavors in a different way. And the fact that what your technique offers is really quick return, then it's like people can really wrap their brains around it and go, oh, okay, it's not like I'm going to put this in oak and then for the next 3 years, hope it's great. And then if it's not, I'm really pissed. It's no, we can, and again, like on the small sample size, you can keep trying, like maybe a little different, a little bit different, a little bit different. It's like, sure, well, what did we do? Really waste like 2 months of time? That's fine. Like to get to the thing that we really want, it's not a bad, return on investment.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's one of the things that we really wanted to accomplish when we started this business is we were inspired by craft brewing and how things are so creative and so fast paced there. It's like new release every week. You know, they're doing a bunch of creative things and aging and whatever else. But when you look at distillers, it's like, all right, we're going to have a vodka, a bourbon, a rye maybe, if we're getting adventurous. But it's like, what else are you doing outside of that? Why are people going to buy your product? Why are people going to gravitate towards your distillery on the weekend? And we're trying to just enable them more than anything to just make things differently. And like, you were talking about the rapid iteration piece. I kind of see that as a big piece of like the craft too. It's like, what's been done is essentially put it and wait. Right? Everything is put it on the shelf and wait. But there's no decision making past that point, like I said earlier. So we're kind of enabling that whole new paradigm of things you can choose and pick about your product that are not necessarily taking away your old options. They're just adding new options.
Yeah. I guess it's also, if you think about it like a chef, right? Years ago, we probably didn't have like pressed garlic and or powdered garlic salt, right? Yeah, or Instapots. Yeah, or I mean all this stuff.
There's technology that changes everything.
Yeah, and the sous vide cooking and all that stuff that that makes incredible dishes and people are benefiting from. So
embrace change.
Embrace change.
It's never going to stop.
It's coming. It is coming.
I appreciate you guys coming on in. So how do people find you then? If anyone's curious, interested, what's the best way to get in contact with y'all?
Probably the best way to find us is just go to our website, www.aevalabs.com.
The Aeva spelled AEVA.
LABS.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we just have a contact page on there. There's a form there. Fill it out, and I'll get an email, and we'll chat. It's basically the best way.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Well, before we get out of here, you guys can have some of
an infusion of a different kind.
Yeah, the royal we had nothing to do with it. But actually, we had everything to do with the success of Proof Alcohol Ice Cream.
Everything.
As we talked about, because since they've been a sponsor on the podcast, now you can find it, Proof Alcohol Ice Cream, everywhere. And what is this? They took ice cream and they took booze. And as you guys already know, booze is kind of a cool thing to center your business around. Well, they threw ice cream on top of it because who doesn't like ice cream and alcohol? They put it together into one little pint container. There's 7% ABV in every container with great flavors like coconut rum, bourbon caramel. They do during the holidays, they have the peppermint moonshine. You can also get cheesecake moonshine. I mean, so many different options. So I wonder how that would work and how that would relate to Aeva Labs if there's some way to, I don't know if you necessarily want to age your ice cream. That's not necessarily probably the best idea. But you could take like a base spirit, age it, and then throw it in some pistachio ice cream. And I bet that would be delicious. So anyway, go to proofalcoholicecream.com. You can find them at the aforementioned Triangle Wine Company. You can also find them at Lowe's or at Total Wine. Harris Teeter, all over the state and the neighboring states as well. But check the link in our show notes as well. But other than that, Matt, what do we got?
Gents, thanks for coming in and sharing your information. This is a fascinating conversation. For everybody out there who wants to learn more about rapidly aged spirits, go ahead and taste some at your local liquor store. The Instill Rum is pretty delicious. The Aeva Instill Rum. And check out aevalabs.com and continue to eat and drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.